Hi everyone, just before we get into this episode of Type 1 I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for pressing play. I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, don't forget to hit subscribe and you'll be notified when new episodes come about. You can find us across podcast land on Spotify, iTunes, all those good places as well. Secondly, anything you hear on this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. I am, of course, not a professional, and you do need to seek advice from your healthcare team before making any changes to your diabetes management. And lastly, if you want to say hello, I do have an Instagram page specifically for the Type 1 podcast. You can find it at Studio Type 1. That's at Studio Type 1, the number, on 1, the number. And you can also come and say hello and follow me on my personal page, which is at Miss Jen Greaves. And all of that will be noted in the episode description. Hi everyone, and welcome to Type 1, a podcast that delves into the obscure, complex and challenging world of life with Type 1 diabetes. I'm Jen Greaves, and each week, with the help of some brilliant guests, I'll be showing that there is no normal when it comes to handling this whopper of a chronic condition, because we're all pretty much figuring out the messiness of day-to-day life with diabetes as we go. And most of all, even though it doesn't always feel like it, we are absolutely not alone. My guest today is Angela McMahon. Life as a mum of 4 girls is as busy as it sounds, but around the school runs and after school clubs and everything else, day-to-day life in Northern Ireland also has Type 1 diabetes in the mix, as Angela's teenage daughter Iszara has been living with the condition since she was just 5 years old. When it crashed into family life, less than a year after Angela also gave birth to twin girls. So we'll definitely be talking a little bit about that. Hello, Angela. Welcome to Type 1.
Hi, Jen. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
So nice to have you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem.
This is such a lovely way to start my week. So for some background, we got chatting a bit on Instagram, as you do in this lovely community, and you told me a little bit about your story and family life, and I just said, oh my goodness, I've so much respect for you. So I really wanted to get you on, because I know for parents especially, like, that's a perspective that I don't have, and I think it's a really important one to talk about, because you guys are carrying so much, raising children as it is, and then you throw this mad chronic condition on the top.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I'll say, interesting, challenging. I'm sure it's entertaining, but I'm sure it has been at points quite, scary for you as well, would you say?
Yeah. Definitely. It's just been a roller coaster from the second it landed. Good times, bad times, everything in between.
Yeah. Yeah. So how's life in Northern Ireland today? How are things?
Yes, all good. Lovely Monday morning. Busy Monday morning as usual.
Yeah, as it goes. So I'm curious, what was the timeline around Iszara's diagnosis and the twins? So Sienna and Ariana are her
Yes.
sisters. Yeah. So what was the
Yes.
kind of timeline there?
So they were born in the February before Iszara was diagnosed. So they were coming up to their first birthday. So they were like 11 months. So
Oh
that,
my
that first
goodness.
year was just crazy. Like pre Iszara even being diagnosed, I've the two of Iszara and then her eldest sister Tamsin. So, like you can look back and you remember all their little firsts. But with the twins, it was literally day by day, feed by feed.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. And they were not the best sleepers. Still
Oh
not to this day.
no. So they're 10 now, right?
They're
So you've
10,
got
yes.
10, 15 and 22. So you've got all the ages covered.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, you're a super mama. That's absolutely amazing. I have 2 brothers, so I've not had this sister experience.
yes.
So I
All
can
girl.
imagine it's a very lively household, I imagine.
Yes. Especially now with the teenagers. The twins think they're teenagers too. So,
Oh, wow, incredible. So I'd love, first of all, just tell me a little bit about family life and where you're at with everything. So we've said there you've got the 3 ages. So is Tamsin thinking about, or is she done her studies? Like, where is everyone at in the kind of
yeah.
path of life? Like,
So Tamsin is 22 now, and actually, in about a week and a half, she is moving to Canada on a work visa.
oh my goodness.
I know. So it was a big, big change for us. So, but it's going to be emotional. But I know it is a good thing for her to do.
Yeah,
So
your
that'll be a
mummy
massive.
heart must be in
Yeah,
two places
yeah.
with that.
She's
Oh,
going to my sister, so at least that's something, But yeah,
yeah,
I think
nice comfort.
it's a good time for her to do it. So
Yeah, amazing. And your husband Stephen is around. We should also
yes,
say
yes,
he's
her
helping
man.
out too. Yeah, surrounded by these girls. That's amazing. And then of course we've got type 1 diabetes in the mix as well, which is no small thing.
Yeah, yeah. So Zara she's 15 now. We're coming up to her 10th anniversary, which is crazy. Is so crazy to think it's been that long. It was almost we can't remember life without type 1.
Yeah,
So yeah, so it was a massive, massive, massive shock. We didn't have it in the family whatsoever.
right.
It
So
was
yeah, tell
sorry.
me a little bit about how it made itself known. As we've discussed, you were very busy with your newborn babies and
Yeah.
you know family life and everything. So how did it start to sort of present itself?
So I guess it was maybe after Christmas. Zara's already been a brilliant eater, and she just wasn't eating as well as normal. Then just different little things. She'd had like a bug like twice within the space of a week. And it's always easy looking back now that that's what that was. But it really was the drinking, the thirst. She was just such an insatiable thirst over a few days. She would be drinking pint glasses with her dinner. She'd be coming home from school and she was asking for hot chocolate. It was just anything, anything to drink. Um, so I remember it was a Friday, and we had a little like walk-in clinic at our local GP, and we'd gone in. And I remember sitting, and my dad was with me. I remember sitting in the waiting room and seeing a poster, and I just remember reading each symptom, even down to she had like a little dry patch on her leg that I'd taken her to the doctor for. And that was just everything. And I said to my dad, she has all this. She has, and that, I think then that's when I realised this is it. So
Oh,
we got called to the doctor who sent us to the treatment room for her bloods. And then the doctor came up and said, straight to hospital. Straight.
and
So
when you saw that poster, did you have any understanding of what that meant, what that entailed?
not one iota. Nope. I only knew it was something to do with injections. That's all we knew. I didn't know how often, like your carb counting, all that was just no, I had no idea. None of us had any idea. I'd never came across, and then I feel a bit ignorant myself looking back. I'd never come across. I possibly have obviously come across people with type 1, but we just never knew. Never
Yeah.
knew anything about it. Nope.
I think it's one of those things that you don't know until you need to know. And when
Yeah.
you do need to know, you really, really need to know because it's become your entire reality, not only
Yes.
for your daughter, but for you and the whole family and school and everything. And I think it's one of those, isn't it? If you've not come into contact with it in a way that impacts you, why would
Yeah.
you?
You
Why would
wouldn't
you
know.
know?
And I do find that hard sometimes when like the general public don't understand. And then I have to kind of pull myself back and say, well, Angela, 10 years ago, you didn't know. So,
Right.
we just
That's
have to try
gracious
and
of you.
remember.
Yeah. Yeah. I do understand that for sure. So, what was your experience like at the hospital? Do you remember how they kind of explained it to you, or what your kind of thoughts and feelings were? I imagine a lot of
Yeah.
information to take in as well.
Oh, huge, huge amount of information. I just remember the doctor coming down, and when I knew it was serious when she said straight to hospital, straight there. So my husband was at work, Stephen was at work, so we phoned him and he met us at the hospital. We went in, hospital was great, no waiting around, straight through the children's. And it had been mentioned type 1 a few times. I do remember the doctor saying, it was suspected type 1. I remember looking at the ceiling, and then she said, this was it. So that was it. That was the day our lives all changed.
Wow. And how was Iszara with this information and what was going on? Like, what sort of
Yeah, so she was only
what was she
5.
expressing? Yeah.
Yeah, she was only 5, so it was huge for her. I can't even imagine how do you tell a 5-year-old, do you know, like, and I do actually remember. I remember that she'd asked me how long did she have to have these injections for? And I always remember her wee face, and I had to tell her that it was forever. But what always sticks with me is I was crying, but there was no sign. So the tears were just completely falling from my eyes, no sound whatsoever. And I remember Iszara said to me, "Mama, you're going to have to see the doctor too because you have such a bad cold." So
Oh
that's
my
how she
goodness
was worried.
me.
I know,
Oh,
I know.
what a sweetie.
I'll always
Bless her.
remember. Yeah, she just didn't understand. You can't
Yeah.
understand at 5. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I hope it's okay to ask to kind of bring you back to that time, which wasn't very pleasant. But how did you get on with the injections? Because I know she's not on injections anymore, so we will get
Yeah.
on to that. But I'm presuming you were doing the injections for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, we did it for
Yeah.
a good while now. Azar was MDI for 5 years. So yeah, we had the practicing in the hospital with the orange and the little fake. I think they gave her like this little fake. It's like a little bit of skin on an arm. You know, you can
Oh
put on
wow.
you clip on your arm, and then she could
Right.
practice. But yeah, well, I do. I remember there was a few tough times having to chase her. You know, you're having to chase her to give her an injection at the very beginning, and eventually, like, she did come round to it. She did. We had our little Rufus bear. Um, she did. She did. No, don't get me wrong. She never liked it. Never wanted to do it. Never. And people always say to you, "I don't know how you do it, but you don't have the choice. You just don't have the choice. You know, it doesn't even come into your head that you. Of course, I didn't want to be doing this, but that's just how it was. We had to do it.
You had to, yeah. You get through it.
Yep.
And what was the regime like in terms of, I'm asking because I got diagnosed in 1996, which is a long time ago now, but it was all quite fixed and a thinking around, there was no carb counting and things like that. So I'm just wondering
Yeah.
how you managed the routine, like what that looked like day to day, and also
Yeah.
bringing it into school. Like, how did you manage that?
So at the very beginning, she was on the mixed injection, you know, the two a day, which was weird. I don't know how. Do you know how you could possibly? And we were trying to keep, her meals the same size and the same at the same time, which, like, for a 5-year-old, it just was not easy. And then it was a
Not super
few,
realistic, is it?
yeah, yeah, just for
Yeah.
everyday life, little parties. Maybe one day we were late home from work, and just things like that. And then so a few years after, we did the carb counting course, and it was really really helpful. But I remember coming home and thinking, how am I going to do with the practicalities of this? To like make we don't have the biggest of kitchens, and trying to make everyone's dinner, and then weigh out all these meals separately. But now it's like, even when she's not with us, I'm like carb counting. It's just there.
It's
You just do
ingrained
it.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I guess as a parent, you've got all these different mouths to feed with different tastes before
yeah,
you put something like measurements and counting and maths on top. And
yeah,
of course, with children, just because you put the plate of food in front of them doesn't mean they're going to eat it all. So if you've
yeah,
counted that up, like I can just imagine that is,
yeah.
I'm responsible for what I put in my mouth as an adult, but for you, that there's just so much going on there.
Yeah, yeah. If she doesn't like it, then it's trying to find something else that she does like to make up the carbs. So yeah, yeah, that was really tough, but we got there like we do. And as I say, I'm like a carb counting book now.
Stuck to your arm. Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm the same with an app. So every meal at home, at least. In restaurants, it's a little bit different, but
Yeah, good stuff.
entertaining, we'll say.
Yeah.
Do you remember a time with all of this going on that you thought, okay, I'm maybe getting the hang of this, or has that been sort of an ongoing journey for yourselves?
Probably, I don't think there was an actual point where we thought we have this. I just think it was day by day, sometimes, reading by reading, and it was just then you realise you've came to a point and, oh, things have been good today. It was just literally, we never, now that we can look back and think, wow, we did that, we got through it. But at that point, it was literally just day by day, hour by hour, night by night.
Yeah, yeah. And how did it impact your relationship with Stephen? Like, what was the communication like around this beast that has entered your household? And also, kind
Yeah,
of, did you have your roles that you naturally fall into with it?
yeah, yeah. Well, it was massive. Like, I mean, we'd had the twins the year before, which was, massive for us anyway. But I think that's actually what helped having the twins. Actually, we were used to the lack of sleep. We were used to be, so whenever you were up with the Zara so many times a night, it wasn't so bad as, if we'd just been coming into it new. I always think that that kind of prepared us. Um, and sometimes you just have to laugh. Sometimes we were so delirious. I think sometimes we just end
Yeah.
up laughing. So that's how, like, don't get me wrong, yes, there was the tough days and we might have clashed over how many carbs was in a meal, things like that, but we just got on with it and say we just have to keep going.
Yeah. And did Iszara surprise you in terms of how she was handling it? Like, what was that like for you to witness?
Yeah, yeah, like going to school. I remember one day she came home and she had a little certificate and she'd done like her own finger prick. At that time there was no CGMs, it was finger prick. And just feeling so proud of her that she'd got to this point. Like, it was more like she was always being guided and people were telling her what to do, but to know that and I mean, she was probably only 7, 6, 7, and to know like she was having to take this on was just huge. And I always find, like, I treat all my girls the same. I love them all equally, but sometimes just it's the little things that really mean a lot. Do you know? Just little small things that you're just really, really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I can imagine that they're the things that you hold on to, aren't they? Because
Yeah,
it is the simple things in life, and to see her grow with this condition alongside her that she's
yeah,
starting to kind of own for herself. That's
yeah,
that's small, but it's not at all. It's huge, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge to see her now at 15. It's just incredible. I could never have imagined at 5 that day she was diagnosed to think, wow, this is what's happening now at 15.
Yeah. And so how did you start to introduce her finger pricking by herself and injecting by herself? What was that transition like?
I think a lot of it was at school. She was encouraged a lot to, do it herself. Always, obviously, with someone with her and someone, watching everything and understanding what the numbers meant. Um, but yeah, it just came naturally. She just eventually, you know, yeah, she would want to do it. And I think what helped a lot now, just coming forward a little bit, um, whenever Azara went onto the pump, it was over lockdown. So that, even with the benefit of lockdown, because she had that time herself, I feel like that was a time where she really got to grips and, got her independence so that when she did start secondary school and made that change from primary to secondary, she kind of owned it. Yes, there's a nurse there that she can go to if she needs to, but I think that was a major, major, major step for her.
Yeah, was going into senior school, secondary school, something I mean, it's a big deal anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
I sort of remember that big jump and then suddenly being surrounded by kids that were like twice my height and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm tiny
Wow.
in this big
Yeah.
school. And then to have that on top as well. Was that something that occupied you a bit in terms
Oh,
of her diabetes as well?
definitely, definitely. And at the time, we were just coming through lockdown, so everything was just a little bit strange, and it was hard. Now I know whenever she did start school, she was with like a friend from her primary school, so all those wee little things helped. And I'd met with the school nurse there, and they're very used. I think they have quite a few type ones, so I was nervous, but at the same time, I knew, she had this pump now and she understood it, and she was just became so much more independent. At the beginning, she would have had to go break and lunchtime and show the nurse what she was doing. But now it's just, I think even after the first year, she just managed herself.
And have the teachers been quite accepting of the fact that she knows her condition best? Because you sort of mentioned that you need someone to have an eye over it. Of course you
Yes,
do. But I'm
yes,
wondering what that relationship is like, because it's something that she owns and she manages as a
yes.
child, where normally the teacher is kind of the point of authority. So what's that been like? How are the teachers with that?
Yeah, that's something that is a quite an ongoing thing for Iszara. Now she would be quiet, so she wouldn't be the first to say, I like a few. Was it last year when she was doing one of her exams? They were doing like mock exams, and it came and I was like, "Oh, you were really low today," and she was like, "Oh, I didn't know that we had to hand our phones in, first thing." And the teacher was like, "No phones," and I was like, "Yeah, but sorry, you need your phone isn't just your phone is your medical device." But she's maybe not there yet with speaking up to say, there is another I'm just not using this phone for cheating or goodness knows what. But we've got there now. So this year she is doing her GCSEs, and where she is allowed to have her phone on the desk or on the front desk. But yeah, it is hard for her sometimes to speak up. But then on saying that, now we at primary school, one of her helpers was type 1. So that
Oh,
was
amazing.
incredible. That
Yeah.
was, I think it was about primary 4. So that was just to know someone else, when someone else knows, what you're talking about, and they don't think that you're, sometimes I think I come across as I'm just this crazy mom that, was constantly on their back. But to her, she was incredible.
Yeah, just gets it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody that gets
And
it.
that's quite a lot for you to navigate as well, because I'm assuming you don't want to seem like that mum that you mentioned,
Yeah.
but at the same time, this is a very serious health condition. So
Yeah.
how did you walk that line, just with other parents listening in mind, and what helped you in terms of any advice you received, or things that you did with the school that actually really paid off and worked?
Yep. No, I would be quite quiet as well. So it was hard for me to push forward sometimes. But what I find really helped was at the beginning of each year, I would have gone in just to have a little chat with the teacher, just to maybe update them and, say how she is. She did have now like the same um, teaching assistant. There was one teaching assistant was with her for quite a long time. So just to kind of keep a open communication with them. Um, but sometimes, yes, it is hard to. You don't want to feel like you're telling them how to do their job, but to let them know, like your child best. So just getting that across sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And where did you turn to for support? Did you mentioned that you didn't know anyone else with type 1 when Iszara was diagnosed? Did you manage to find people, and how did that kind of help you processing this as a parent?
Yeah. Well, I think a big thing has been just seeing online, like the positive online. I'd say you were one of the first that we came across, Jen. And honestly, your positive outlook has really helped us at times.
Oh,
And
thank
just
you.
all that, just keeping positive. Like I have my family that I rant to. I'm sure sometimes they're fed up with me, but just getting your feelings and frustrations out. Yeah, yeah, just trying to remain positive. And her nursing team has been great. Where they're always just we see them every 3 months roughly, and they're always at the end of the phone for advice or her help. So yeah, they're all lovely too.
That's amazing. And I think I can imagine that makes a big difference, because I think I sort of saw it as something, well, I was quite nervous. We would go in, we didn't have the tech back then. So it was this like, how are you doing? You just be like, yep, fine, get
Yeah,
out of there as quickly as possible. But it took me years and years to realize that I could email them if I could ask questions. I just don't think that was something that really occurred to us. It certainly didn't occur to me when I transitioned into adult care. But have you got quite an open dialogue with her care team?
oh definitely. Yeah, we just send like last week there we've trying the Libra 2 Plus. So I have just been popping little WhatsApp messages through to her nurse, and she'll reply, or she'll give us a call. It's definitely that's the one thing I'm maybe a little bit nervous about, like moving into the adult care. It has been so good. The team have just been, even from the very first day, I remember her nurse the whole way through, just they're always there.
That's so wonderful. And I imagine it's setting her up very well to kind of make that transition smoother, to have that kind of open communication. Because I think sort of speak to different people, and my own experience as well, where it's either something that you feel comfortable talking about, or it's something that you hide away. And I've met people
Yeah,
on various points of that spectrum. So for her to have that experience of being able to talk without judgment, I think is quite a powerful thing, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
This episode of Type 1 is sponsored by Dexcom. I've been using the Dexcom continuous glucose monitor for years, and it's hard for me to express just how much of a difference it's made to my life as someone living with type 1 diabetes. Their CGM sensors give me the confidence to make informed treatment decisions in the moment, which is great for me as I'm often running around, and with just a quick glance I can see exactly where my glucose level is, where it's been, and where it's headed. So please take a look at Dexcom.com. They have a choice of systems, so you can find the right one for your lifestyle. Let's talk then a bit about this journey with the technology, because it was injections and finger pricks for a while, as you said. So where did the pump or CGM, sort of come about, and where did it start to crop up, and what were your thoughts when you initially heard about this technology that could
Yeah.
help her?
Now I do remember we were getting along just fine on the injections, and I remember speaking to another family, um, whose child was the same age as Iszara, and I remember them saying, she's on a pump, it's incredible, you would never look back, and I was just like, oh, I don't know. I found it very hard to like put your trust in a little machine, that was to do all the work that we were doing, and I just was like, I don't know. But we did. We put her name down for the pump, and it was just February. Yes, February 2020. She moved on to the Omnipod Dash. No, it wasn't. It was the Eros
Oh, yeah,
first.
I had that one for a
Yes.
long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
She moved on to
pager. I
that.
loved it.
Yes. Yes. Oh, it's so clunky. Um.
How old was Iszara at that point?
So that was lockdown. So 10. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. She was in her last year of primary school. Yeah. Yeah. So she would have been 10. Yeah, so that wasn't. Then looking back now, I remember the day that she got it, and the first time that we bolused without an injection, and it kind of took me by surprise. Like I welled up, I got teary, just got a bit emotional, but just to see what the technology was doing. And it did. I am terrible for writing notes, so it did take me a little time to, like, I was writing down every time she was bolus and how much it gave her, and
Mm.
like it was very. But then I tried my best. I trusted it more and more the more we could see it. And then, well, she was only on that for a short time. That was the February, and then middle of March, end of March, then we got the dash.
Oh, wow.
So
So it
she
was really
wasn't on
short.
it. Yeah, yeah, she wasn't on it that length, but yeah, the pump, moving to a pump was a major. I'm so glad that she did. She was happy to do it.
Okay, so how did that first pump? Well, the Eros and the Dash, they're similar-ish, aren't they? It's more the
Yeah,
controller that's different, but the functionality is quite similar, isn't it? So
yeah, yeah, pretty
how
much.
did that impact her life going on to that first iteration of the pump, or pumps in her
Yeah,
case?
it was just so much, like, day to day life was so much easier, and I think especially it was, when we were out and about, there wasn't that. You were just popping out a little device that looked like a phone, popping in your carbs and your bloods, instead of like getting out your whole kit and doing your whole finger pricking and your injection. It was just so much more easier, so much more easier for her. And I think that was the time where she kind of started to own it a little bit and come to terms with it, just because of the it being so much more easier.
Yeah, it wasn't making quite a parade in terms of I remember, yeah, like having to find somewhere to stop, sit down
Yep.
to test your blood, like, waiting for the countdowns and all those things. And now you go into like just a few buttons. I guess these points as a child where you're sort of made to feel quite different, or that you need something extra than everyone else. That's most people don't want to feel like that. So I can imagine how the pump sort of makes everything a little bit more subtle, but at the same
Yeah,
time, it is looking after her, like you say. I think that trust piece that you mentioned is really interesting, to go from kind of being all eyes on and manually being in control of everything that you're doing, to then sort of stepping back. As a
yeah,
parent, that must have been quite a lot to handle.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
just seeing that no human could keep up with the calculations, that that's doing. It was it was just that initial trust in it that, this is what it can do. And just trying to step back a little bit.
Yeah. That I think that's a common concern for people, quite naturally. We sort of guard this thing literally with our lives, don't we? Because we have to, and to sort of pass that over. But it's nice to hear that all kind of allowed you to step back a little bit, actually. Because we've discussed this a bit in messages, but for me, there's kind of two sides to this technology. There's the outcomes and what it can do for health, but then there's this, like, being able to breathe a bit of space into your
Yeah,
lives where it's not
yeah,
all diabetes all the time. And would you say that that's kind of been your experience?
yeah, definitely. It's massive. Like, obviously, yes, as you say, the main thing is, better outcomes with the technology, but the quality of life that comes with that is just as important, and sometimes maybe more important. This is your life. So yeah, yeah, definitely just to lift that weight, not even just off our shoulders, but just off Zara's shoulders, and just everything was just that wee bit easier, and just kind of, I think by that stage it was just nearly woven into our everyday lives. So yeah, yeah, it just definitely helped major. I'm so glad that we did make that decision, and she was happy to go on to pumping.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to parents who are maybe nervous around the tech like you were, but also potentially, if the conversations have come up with care teams and you want it for your child, but perhaps the child isn't quite ready, like, what would you sort of think in terms of having those conversations around the
Yeah,
tech?
I would always, try and advocate as best you can for your child, and to do as much research as you can, and go in, you know, prepared with all the knowledge that you can. Um, Regarding with your child maybe not wanting to, I would just say give it time, and just, like, it will come. There's you just I wouldn't push it. Like, I know with the Zara, she does things in her own time. You can't, you can't. She no, she definitely she will make her own decisions, definitely.
Yeah. And how has the tech, because there's also CGMs, like, when
Yeah,
did that come into the picture?
I remember her first CGM was the Libra One. It was around Christmas. It was just before Christmas, because I remember we do have this little photograph, and she's got her arm up, and she's got her
Ah,
Libra, and it was just before Christmas. It was like the best Christmas present ever. It just came available, and I think Northern Ireland was maybe the first, of the in the UK that was able to get it. So
right.
yeah, we were on that for a while. Then we did the little, I think it was a little bubble attachment that would clip onto it, that
Oh, on the
allowed.
top.
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes.
remember. Was it the meow meow?
It was the map. Was it? I think it was called Bubble.
Right.
I
Okay.
think it
Okay.
was Bubble. So we had that for a while, which was brilliant for us to see, what her bloods were. That was the big
Did
thing
that mean
for
that
us.
you could share the data?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So me and my husband were able to see, which was a major thing for us. So then that was fine until she lost it. It fell off. It fell off one day. I think it was maybe when she was at games. No, so we never found that again. But then she moved to the Dexcom one, which she really, really, we've had no problems with that whatsoever. It's been really good for her. She's really, even though it's a shorter, so she only wears that for the 10 days rather than the 2 weeks. She really would never had any issues with falling off, or she's loved that. So then from June this year, we've been using the G6, which was just incredible. We've really loved that. Really, I know that's a little bugbear of mine, so it's not available on prescription in Northern
Ah, okay.
Ireland. So we reverted last about a week and a half ago to the Libra 2 Plus, which we are finding a, a few wee issues with. So we're going to move back to the Dexcom G6. Um, but it's just things like that maybe that we just have to keep on trying to fight for.
Yes, yes. And hopefully there will be parity with all of this. And we've seen that progress, which is amazing. But it is
Yep.
the small things, like you say, if something makes someone feel more comfortable, it does make a difference in your relationship with your diabetes, I think. And
Yes.
I'm sure that's something you've witnessed as well, particularly going
Yeah.
through teenage years where, well, personally speaking, I was so conscious of myself and, everything like that. I didn't have tech then, but I can imagine that makes a difference, feeling good around these things on your body and what you're
Yes.
using. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I had told
And
Iszara that we'd ordered the G6, and she said, "Oh, my baby," that she just wanted it back again. So if it makes her happy. So, and as I said before, you can't put a price on that. So
yeah, and yeah, it goes back to that thing we were saying about the health outcomes being part of it, but actually how you feel about all of this being such an important part of it and the
yes,
impact on quality of life. So this is all in relation to the hybrid closed loop, isn't it?
yes. So from
So
mid-June this year, yes. So we've
yeah.
been doing the closed loop with the Omnipod 5. And again, as I said, whenever she did her first bolus without injection, it caught me by surprise and I got emotional. It was the same whenever she moved to the Omnipod 5. We were in the clinic, um, and we'd got everything on, and then the nurse had told us, we could go into the history, and just to see that it was already working and it was doing all those like minuscule calculations, just to see that, like, I knew we'd obviously read up about it and looked at it, but just to see it in black and white that it was actually doing all this, it's just amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly the experience I had. I
Hmm.
just staring at it in disbelief.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, truly. And it was like, oh, we have been working really hard at this, because now this machine is doing this all
yeah.
instead. It's quite a lot to take in, isn't it?
It's amazing.
Yeah. So how's your sleep now? Because I imagine when you were doing the finger pricks and the injections that,
Yeah,
and raising baby twins as well,
yeah.
like, so how are you guys doing with the sleep?
It's been since June. I don't think I've slept so sound, so well. Like, I think there's been one night we had to get up with her with one alarm, but apart from that, no alarms, no. She's been pretty much steady. It's the sleep has been a major, like maybe like if just prior to that we were up a few times each night, and then it's just like the next day trying to function. It's so
Yeah, of
difficult, but
course.
Azara would never, she never would wake from when she has a hypo. She's never, so it's always been, we're always just into her room like a zombie and feeding her the jelly babies. But no, it's been major. Like, since June, we sleep now. Finally, after all these years.
Yeah, how many years? 10 years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my goodness me. That really says it all, I think, isn't it? It's
yeah,
just, yeah, that's a powerful thing for parents,
yeah. It's
especially.
just to have that 7 8 hours, and you just feel so much better in the morning. And again, it's with the trust. You put your trust in that technology. But I find, even I was waking, and the first thing I would do would look at my phone to see what she is constantly. And now sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I haven't checked what she is for a few hours, and I nearly, like, if I would feel guilty that I've forgotten about it. But it's just letting the technology do its thing, I guess, and trying to stand back a little again.
Yeah. Yeah. And how are you finding that as she gains more independence in life in general and goes a bit further or is
Yeah,
trying out new things. Like, talk to me a bit about that.
yeah, that is something I will struggle with, I think. As she's growing older, like even as I said, with my eldest now moving to Canada, I feel, oh, I'm having to let go of her a little bit to even think about, when Iszara comes to that stage, that's going to be really, really difficult. But like, I just want her to know that I still like seeing what her bloods are and knowing that she can come to us, or that we'll always be there for anything that she needs. But yeah, it's hard to let her go a little bit and just be a normal teenager sometimes.
Yeah. Is there any sort of communication style that you've found her? I know every child is different, but particularly responsive to in regards to being able to talk about diabetes, but not as like the main focus of life.
Yes. Yeah, that has been a big thing as well, that you have to try and um, just be wary that that's not the main thing. And it's so hard sometimes when it actually, sometimes at that point, is the main thing. But it's just to try, and that's what the with the technology just helps. You know, I'm not when she's coming through the door. It's not like, what's your bloods been? How's your levels been? It's more like, well, how's your day been? Forgetting about all that side of it. Um, but yeah, when she's out and about now with her friends, she checks in with us, and she is quite sensible that way. The one thing she hates is carrying her kit with her all the time. She detests carrying. She just wants to be spontaneous and go out,
Mm.
whereas she's having to make sure she's got everything that she needs in her bag. When sometimes she doesn't want to carry a bag with her, she just wants to be normal sometimes and just go out with her friends without thinking about it.
Do you have any understanding of, how her friends interact with it, whether they're looking out for her or whether she talks to her friends about her type 1?
Yeah, no, she would be quiet, but they are all aware of the type one. But obviously, just on the surface, they wouldn't, on a deeper level. But now I know recently, her granda would pick her up from school, most days. So she would have games lasting. I think it's maybe a Wednesday. And I'd gone to pick her up, and she was low at the time. So one of her friends was with her. So that really, like, to know that somebody would know to stay with her until their bloods were up, that really, I was like, oh, that's so nice. So she is open with them, um, to a degree, but I think it's just she lets them know just enough that they need to know. But she's with her friends. She doesn't want to be talking about type one all the time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I can completely relate to that. And it's completely understandable. Even if
Yeah,
it wasn't diabetes, there's many, many things that you only want to kind of speak about to a point, isn't there?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it completely makes sense. But yeah, that must have been a nice relief for you to know that she's got good people around who understand enough to know that they need to stay with her. That's very sweet. And how about you in terms of asking for help or bringing other people in to what is a very complicated condition, and it's sort of within your walls as a family, isn't it? So how have you navigated asking for help? What has that support been like? Has it been useful? Can you talk to me a little bit about that as a parent?
yeah. As a parent now, I do find it hard to ask for help. But it's hard to let go and to give the reins to someone else for a little while. Whenever you know everything, as much as you can possibly know, about your child. But it says, I do have my family, and they're great with us. Just for letting off steam, just to take a break sometimes, and just to, like, it is important just to know that this is not everything, that this is, and it's always easy with hindsight to look back, just to know that you do get through it, and it's just taking day by day, and trying to remain positive, and just surround yourself with positive people, and yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm sensing that like the technology has really been so life changing for you all as a family dynamic. And so, can you talk to me a little bit? I imagine, obviously, when she was diagnosed, there must have been so many thoughts and fears running through your mind about what her future might look like and things like that. Can you talk to me a bit about your feelings then and perhaps your feelings now, having lived with it for quite a time and also seen these changes that have impacted her life and benefited her life in terms of what you feel about the future for her?
Well, thinking back at that when she was diagnosed, you would never have imagined that now, that this little machine is doing all the work for her. You could never ever have imagined. At the time, I just thought it's hard to imagine that it's hard to imagine and to come to terms with the fact that it is forever, and that how would she deal with this forever, and how would she, even to a practical point, like, it's hard enough to live your life and without all these massive decisions and things to remember. So that's what always, not frightened me, but I did have a worry. How would she, just progress with having all this extra too? Um, but you do get there, and with the technology, it's amazing, and that's why I'm always like so hopeful for what could come in the future again. Just to know that people are working hard and there's always stuff going on in the background, and that, like, it's incredible what's happened in the last 10 years. So to think in a further 10 years when she's 25, wow, like, it's just amazing to think how things will be then.
Yeah, much like hopeful, I think, is
Yeah.
the kind of sense. Yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing. And do you know if, you said that you sought out some support or like information online, a lot of research when you were looking into pumps and things? Well, I guess my first question is where did you go for that? Was it more the online community or was it more the like manufacturers' websites? And sort of how did you kind of wade through all that, that information that is out there now,
Yeah.
thankfully, but it's also a
Yeah.
lot to contend with, isn't it? So
Yeah,
how
there's a
did you approach that?
huge there's a huge, and like the internet, there's just so much, but it's just, I think it was a combination of both. We kind of tried to gather as much information, from the general companies, but then also there's lots of like Facebook groups and just taking like a general. I wouldn't be one for posting a lot. I'm quite of a lurker and I like to read, and but it's just trying to take a general get a general feel, and a general consensus how, what works for people, what doesn't, and also just to remember that sometimes the bad stories that you might hear, but for one bad story you're maybe not hearing, like, there's 20 good sides. Like, you're only hearing the bad because it has been a bad story. But just to understand, and as also just to do what's best for yourself at the time too.
Yeah, you know yourself and your family
Yeah.
better than anyone. Yeah, absolutely. And second to that, does Iszara have any kind of interactions in the diabetes space online? Do you know if she uses social media around her diabetes or does she keep that kind of out of Instagram
Yeah,
and things like that?
she does try to maybe not interact at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, like, I would, say to show her things, like the diabetic duo that's from Northern Ireland too. I think they're like great role models for young girls now. So like I would try to show her, the positive sides, and all the famous people, and just keep her up to date with things that are happening. Just keeping a conversation just going, just, yeah.
Yeah, nice, but not kind of throwing it
Overwhelmed.
at her.
Yeah,
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 yeah, absolutely. And again, I can completely understand how you wouldn't want to necessarily dive into that. It's just, and it's different phases, isn't it? There's certain timings, I
yeah,
think, that are important for each person. Yeah. And how about the relationship between her and her sisters in terms of where diabetes comes into it and any changes that you've noticed, in the dynamics since this technology has taken some of that weight and that pressure off.
yeah,
I'm just curious as to how like it all interplays in a busy house
yeah.
of the girls. Yeah.
So the twins have always, they were only 11 months old, so they've always known their life with Iszara with type 1. And I always remember they must have only been about 2, and we were over at a little shop, and I was thinking, and at this time I had them strapped to me, like with the little um on my waist, and there was one going one way and one going the other way. I remember walking past in the store, and there was just like all the sweets, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness, they're going to throw a tantrum. This is going to be one of those moments that I'm going to wish I didn't come in here myself. But I remember one of them just said that was Azara's medicine, and it was just like,
Oh.
on the one hand, I was like, oh wow, they didn't throw a tantrum, but at the same time, like they knew, they were aware of, like, at age 2, this was not treats, this was Azara's medicine, and it was a bit sad too. But say they've always just grown up with her knowing this, and maybe just on like days out and stuff, they've known, like, maybe when we're on a walk, that we just have to pause for a little while and wait for Azara's bloods to come up. So they've just always um just been aware of it, through their whole lives. But I do find with the closed loop, Azara is definitely more. I think it must just be with her levels being more steady. She's just a lot more happy in herself, and you do see her interacting a little bit more with her sisters. Now, don't get me wrong. Some days it's like World War III, like typical teenage behavior. But yeah, she's definitely coming along, coming around, and they're getting on a lot better, which I do think is partially to do, well, not partially, a lot to do with her just feeling better in herself.
Yeah, yeah, it really comes back to that quality of
Hmm.
life piece that we've sort of really kept coming back to, haven't we? And that's actually why we
Yeah,
connected, because
yeah,
we were sort of talking about not the technology itself, but actually the outcomes and on
yeah,
things like personality. I've noticed like my personality changing as my perspective changes, and my relationship with the condition has
yeah,
changed. Yeah, and I think that extends to my relationship with everyone in my life. So yeah, I can completely understand that. And I don't have teenage hormones running around anymore, so I can imagine that as well. It's a lot. It's a lot.
yeah.
So yeah, it sounds like she's doing incredibly.
She did say to me now, with the closed lip, once we'd gone on to it for a few weeks, she'd said it was almost like sometimes that she'd forgot that she even had type 1, because, and as well, we weren't on
Mhm.
her back constantly. Have you corrected? What are you, But it was because it was just, it's doing all the work in the background, and you just can't get on with other things. You just feel lighter, and just takes up, just less amount of your time. And that's not the first thing that when I wake up anymore, it's not the first thing that I immediately go to do to see what her bloods are anymore. Come round a little bit, and I was like, oh, what is she?
Amazing. Do you feel like you've got more space in your day that isn't
Majorly.
all diabetes?
Yep. Yep. So when Iszara was diagnosed, I was about a month left of my maternity leave. So I did take a career break, and I've only gone back to work there in January of this year. But it's been lovely. It's been so good, and it's helped with her independence too, not having me there, all the time, and relying on me as much. So it's been really good. And with the extra sleep that we're having now, like, I'm not so foggy and like a zombie anymore.
Yeah, that must be quite emotional, because I think, yeah, like you say, there's the sleep itself, but then it's the impact on your life as a busy parent trying to, get everyone out the door for school and remember all the things for all the different clubs and where everyone's going that weekend and what they might be doing. And so having a clearer head,
Yeah.
and on top of that, all the things that you're thinking out about, less of those things are diabetes related. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine how priceless that is for you guys. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
It's
yourself.
just, there is no, like, I would definitely, hyperclosed loop is just, like, people say it is a life changer, but it actually, when you're living it day in, day out, it really just makes such a difference to, like, not just as, I mean, it's for Azara's benefit first and foremost, but just for the whole whole family. It's just been such a change.
Absolutely wonderful. Um, what are your hopes for Iszara for the future? I know we've sort of touched on it in relation to kind of fears around at the time of diagnosis, but what are your hopes for your daughter, for all of your daughters? I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully now our major thing is now next year. Hopefully this will be our first holiday abroad, going to visit her sister. So that'll be a big thing. But again, with the closed loop, I think it's going to make it a lot more easier than if she hadn't been on it. And I guess just in general, for Azara specifically, just to be easy on herself. She's got a lot to deal with, and just not to be. And it's easy saying it as now as her parent. I know everyone is hard on themselves, but just to give yourself space, and just to look back and see like how incredible and how brave she's been, and then for all of them in general, just to do something that makes them happy, and just know that then they can come to us and we'll be here.
Yeah, wonderful.
So soppy.
Um, no, it's lovely. It's so beautiful to hear. As a parent, what if it all kind of if she was diagnosed now today, what would have helped you in that time? And I think, as you said before, you kind of only can take one step at a time, one day at a time, one dose at a time to really get through. But is there something that really helped you, or that you didn't have, that would have helped you with the benefit of hindsight in that newly diagnosed time?
I think there's so much at that first, and the first diagnosis, and it's just like you're trying to learn for you're taking on like a uni degree that you've not signed up for. Just there's
Yeah.
just so much, and it would just be to just let yourself know you can't possibly know everything straight away. And even like it did take us a few years, even now we have days where we're having to look things up or think, is this right? It just takes time, and just to still take it just day by day, and again just try and find information that, well, like I know when we were at the hospital it was just leaflets after leaflets, and but just to take it in and digest it at your own time, that it will come, it will become easier. It just becomes part of your life. You just do come to terms with it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a nice point to end on, isn't it? You can't really, there's only so much you can anticipate before you actually experience it. And there's only so much you can protect yourselves from, because type 1 diabetes has got a mind of its own.
Yep.
So there's an inevitability to being put into situations that you can't anticipate. And it's kind of breathing through them and taking them decision by decision, as you said. Yeah,
Yep.
that's a nice
Because you
nice
can
note
be
to end
so
on.
organized and have everything, but as you know, that sometimes it just does not want to play,
Yeah.
or no matter how well prepared you are, just always be prepared for you know something not just going quite right.
Yeah. Yeah. Where can people find you if they'd like to say hello and connect with you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. As I say, I don't really post that much, but I do like to follow lots of different accounts, and sometimes it's just so just to see that other people who are experiencing the same things as you, and just to say that your feelings are, you're not alone, that you are experiencing the same things as other parents, and just trying to get through life with type 1 and with a type 1 teenager.
Yeah, amazing. I'll pop your details in the episode description if that's okay.
Yeah,
People can give you a
yeah,
little
sure.
message. But I'm very grateful for you saying yes. I've dragged you into the spotlight out from the
Thank
out
you.
from the passive messaging. But I'm so grateful, because I know there's so many parents out there, particularly as you go into this teenage sort of time. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I'm incredibly grateful to you for speaking to me today. And Iszara sounds like an absolute credit to you. And I've no doubt that you've really shaping her into, and the whole family into beautiful women. So yeah,
Well,
thank you so much.
hopefully, everything crossed.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
I know it's been lovely to meet with you, Jen. Lovely, and we'll be still following you, and I'll be still showing Iszara your little posts. So
Oh, good. Well, you can show her the one from this episode. Yeah, no, it's nice when the online world becomes a bit more like real
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
when you actually interact with people. So yeah, this has been lovely. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Type 1 on 1. Please remember that nothing you hear on this podcast should be taken as medical advice. I'm definitely not a healthcare professional. If you like what you hear, hit subscribe and do leave a little review on iTunes if you have time. It really helps to spread the word about type 1 diabetes. And thank you so much for listening.